Welcome to Blue Monday, or it could be Boo Monday by the end of this show. I'm joined by Dave and Rodger this morning. We're probably going to pick apart a little bit of the Southampton game, although we did cover that quite extensively over the weekend. And get talking about Sean Dyche, really, because it feels like a lot of the feeling towards him is really now shifting whole scale towards get rid. This isn't good enough. Rodger, you were at the game at the weekend. What was the feeling like in the stands?
I had probably one of the best views I've had at a football ground. I was right at the very back on the back row. And
near the exit?
No, miles away from the exit. It took me forever to get out, and I did, of course, stay till the bitter end, as we all should. I think the atmosphere was surprisingly subdued. There was a bit of a sing-along. There wasn't a lot to get behind on the pitch, just like we talked about last week, didn't we, about... Yeah. You know, if we don't start brightly, or if there isn't a crunching tackle, which of course there was from Tarkowski, and how he avoided a red is a matter for debate. The atmosphere was a bit subdued. I mean, you know, the away fans are great and they're loyal and they do sing and they get behind, and we sang the Dyche song and loads of others. But you know, I got a sense from the people around me, and because I was at the back, it was just sort of people to the side and in front, so I wasn't right in the middle of it. But which really started to come out, I think, in the second half, and particularly with some of the substitutions. I think Ndiaye was probably injured and had taken a knock, taken quite a kicking, so it was kind of understandable why he came off. But and obviously we're attacking the away end in the second half, and there was frustration that the chances came and the chances got missed. And then, of course, the goal, and then it all kind of blew up, because it was a dreadful piece of defending, I think, collectively. You know, whilst they didn't run right through the heart of our midfield, the guy ran a long way down the wing unchallenged and crossed it to a guy standing unmarked in the middle of the penalty area, whilst, you know, Tarkowski and others were blowing for tugs to try and catch him up. I had a word with Dave Kelly on the way out, and he's not a fan of Dyche, and, you know, Dave Kelly's one of the most patient and you know, long-standing Blues you could wish to meet. I had a chat with John Blaine in the boozer before the game, and he's not a fan. So this doesn't see. I know he's not a fan in terms of, you know, he shouldn't be there anymore. But no one's going to get rid of him. How can we get rid of him? And I've heard other, you know, the likes of Linden off Toffee Web, Head on Toffee TV have had enough of him. The time's up. You know, he's run out of excuses, hasn't he? I just can't understand almost anything about why Branthwaite wasn't on the pitch. Why you bring Branthwaite on to throw a centre half, Mike Lyons style up front, and so little belief. You know, I think that opportunity that Jack Harrison had. He sort of semi-shits out of it because Ramsdale is coming towards him. If he'd gone in with a bit more commitment, he's got the whole of the goal there, and just a more positive touch, it would have gone in.
Yeah.
Something you can't criticise Michael Keane for, because he nearly bust his collarbone crashing into the post, didn't he? And it's a fantastic save from Ramsdale. The more you see that, brilliant. It's an absolutely fantastic save. But the players seem to me to lack confidence, and we can talk about them taking responsibility and the manager being responsible for tactics, but surely he's got to instill some confidence in those players and be able to send them out confident away to clearly the worst team in the division, who were there for the taking, and who two desperately poor teams, and we managed to be the better team and lose. It's fan base is certainly the travelling fan base were pretty pissed off by the end of it. One or two, you know, applauding. Not all the team came over. In fact, only 3 or 4 came over, right. My recollection. Couldn't wait to get down the tunnel, and that's always a telltale sign, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, definitely. I think looking at the fixtures, I think I saw it on Twitter, like for like, I think we're 4 points behind last season. So if you look at it in the context of how last season went, it's probably not, you know, time to panic. But Dave, it feels like it now, doesn't it? I think, as we said at the weekend, it feels like maybe not panic, but really start to get concerned when you look at the fixtures we've got coming up. I mean, I'm not even talking about like Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, those ones. I am talking Brentford, who are having a reasonable season. Wolves are sort of turning it around and picking up the odd result now. It just feels like we've missed so many opportunities to get points. and like Rodger said, the confidence feels like it's on the floor, and it's a really bad time to have like that sort of feeling around the club, isn't it, going into these Christmas fixtures?
No, it really is. And the thing that gets me with that as well is, I think we touched upon it last week with Rodger as well, with Goodison, feeling that Goodison's a little bit different because it's the last season there. Those home games have been ones that we've been able to sort of say, well, do you know what, we'll rely upon them. We'll get 3 points there. And I think our record under Dyche at Goodison, and people correct me if I'm wrong, is not that good, really. So, in my opinion, since we've had him, I felt more comfortable when we played away from home with Dyche. But the obvious happens if he starts cocking up when we're away from home and we're not picking up points then. But if you look at those home fixtures there, with Brentford, Wolves, I think we got Forest as well. Forest doing in third, by the way. Or they're the fourth now, they're in the top four, Forest. These aren't gimmies. And obviously, a standard thing to say is no gimmies in the Premier League. But there's games at home that you absolutely need to take points from in order to not be in a mess. And we're in a mess. We're very, very fortunate to be 5 points above the bottom three, which I think indicates the level at which we need to finish above. I just think the issues are a little bit deeper than that. Obviously, top of the list is to stay in the Premier League, but it's maintaining with what we've got. Now, a lot of debate that I had over the weekend was the way in which Everton are these days. Should we have lifted the bar a little bit since staying up and the players we've got in? In my opinion, and I think most Blues, not to speak for everybody, would say, yeah, we should be a little bit more comfortable. I'm not talking about European challenging. I'm not talking about, can we get into the top half of the table? I'm talking about a relative level of comfort where we're able to say in March, April, let's look forward to Bramley-Moore. We've stayed up, and it should be, 10 points clear at the bottom three. I don't think that's too much to ask of Sean Dyche and that squad that he's got. I think that a lot of people have been critical of him because the squad's better. In my opinion, it's the best squad he's had at Everton. Look, that's not difficult. I understand that's not difficult, but you can look at that bench now, and we've had that as a constant theme of how poor he's been as our manager. Over a year now, where the substitutes, Rodger, I was sad enough last year to start trying to find out what the mean amount of time was when he make a substitute in a game, and it was around 74. You cannot do that in the Premier League, and I keep banging on this comment that you will get found out in this division. You will get found out if you persist with what you've got. Level of stubbornness is something that's a common theme of Everton managers. Him doing that at the level at which we are, that makes me a lot more fearful that we're going into our fourth consecutive season of a relegation fight. Is that suffice for Sean Dyche to be Everton's manager? Absolutely not. And look, and again, I think you need to emphasise when people think, oh, these are knee-jerk reactions. The other thing you only have to look at as well is the way in which we play. You mentioned there, Rodger, about the goal we conceded, the way in which we defend. You look at the chances we created there. We really should have scored a couple of goals. But how often in games are we saying that we've missed chances? I felt really sorry for Beto when he come on, especially when he scores that goal, which probably should have counted. That's the best thing I've ever seen him do.
Wonderful touch and finish, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Exactly. That's what I mean. And that's the thing. I think there's an irony to that because Dyche will come on and he'll live on that. He will live on saying, "Oh, we've been unlucky here, we've been unlucky there," which tends to be the narrative all the time with him. Yeah. And I think the fans, many of which you mentioned, there, Rodger, have had enough of this. And look, we're not at a point where people will say, "Oh, do you know what? We're always doing this. We're always sacking managers." This is this fella's third season now, isn't it? And Everton don't look any better than when he first came in. Obviously, it was panic time when he came in to save us. That's the best what he can do. I had this discussion again yesterday on social media about what's he got in his tank that can ever see him be appointed by a team that aren't in trouble. He's never done that in his career. And people are saying, "Oh, he got Burnley into Europe one season. I think they finished 8th or something like that." I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, "But if you go back and look at it, he played his second string 11 in the qualifiers for that Europa League because he didn't want them to be in the competition in order to ensure that they were still going to be a Premier League side. I just feel as if it reminds me somewhat of Allardyce, where you've got somebody in there, which he was the ideal man for the job when he came in after Lampard and kept us up. And the season that follow, where Everton in a position, point deductions and whatnot, that's his forte. Anything higher than that, his ceiling is really, really low. And we're at a point now where I think that we have to change this, and it has to be done quite quickly, because you mentioned that run of fixtures we've got in December. If you wait until January and we go and get, I don't know, 4 or 5 points even, and still think we'd be in and around the bottom three, wouldn't we, if we did that in December? You then going into January, you change your manager over then, where there's a window that you can actually sign some players. That seems to me too far down the line. So in my opinion, I think he needs to go as soon as possible.
Well, we did that, didn't we, with Lampard? We kept him about probably 6-8 weeks too long. And, if we are going to make a change, we can't be doing that again, because as you say, it could be, it could be the one season too many where you're circling the drain. Just on Dyche, though, sort of last season it wasn't a nice season. It wasn't a good season by any stretch. But taking in the round and looking at the points we got and where we would have finished without the points deductions, that was something to build on. And I think that's why I felt relatively confident going into the season that we're going to be sound, because he'd done a decent job last season, all told, even though it was just basically in 2 bursts during the season. Picked up a lot of draws in that winless run. And yeah, did okay, and that should have been something to build on. But again, he comes in, doesn't he? And he plays everything down. A little bit like Moyes used to do. Really, obviously a different end of the table. But Moyes was always like, we can't break that glass ceiling. We've gone as far as we can get. We can't go any higher than that. And we never did. Now with Dyche, it seems to be like sort of the other way around. It's like, well, like the same sort of thing. Like, we can't go any higher than this. We're going to be in this relegation scrap. He talked everything down. And do you think, Rodger, do you think that has an impact on the players and the outlook going into games? It's like, well, we're not good enough to go out and blather this team. Everything's talked down to say, let's just get through this one. Let's just get through this game, because he is essentially a point a game manager, isn't he? That's pretty much his record, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He averages like a point a game, I think. Do you think there's something in that he needs to? I don't think he will, because he's never done this, but needs to be more confident and like talk the players up into games.
I think there's everything in that. And I think the club is utterly complicit in it, because the club's been peddling this narrative of just get to Bramley Moore, just get to Bramley Moore. It's bullshit. Yeah. It's absolute bullshit. Because what's going to change when we get to Bramley Moore, other than season tickets being a couple of £100 dearer? What's going to change? If he's still here, and half those, I know a lot of contracts are up, but the bar is now so low. And as you say, Les, he dumbs everything down to what do you expect? All the trouble I've had, and you don't know the half of it. I'm just sick and tired of hearing his whiny, crying it in. It's bullshit. Football is a game of small margins, but it's also a confidence game. And those players are obviously hearing and reading his comments and thoughts, and he's managing the expectations of the players. He's managing the expectations of the fans. The majority of fans, and particularly those longer standing, those longer in the tooth fans, some of whom I alluded to respectfully earlier, have had enough of this bullshit. I think we would stand there, and if we were just grinding out 0-0s and defending properly and being able to pick up a point a game, some tough away fixtures and getting a good gritty 0-0 draw, or getting a point where it's a tough place to go, which Southampton shouldn't be. But this team can't defend anymore, and that's the most worrying thing. I mean, we defend like school children. Thank goodness we had a slightly better midfield. Mangala had a good game, and Idrissa didn't have to do it all. But we can't defend properly. The fullbacks, our best defender, the best defender in that team is Ashley Young, and that's crazy. Mykolenko, wherever he was for the goal, Tarkovsky, as we've said, is turning into a headless chicken. Very, very lucky to stay on the pitch. This is the third, fourth time he's made one of those, desperate lunges this season. And Keane's playing better than him, and Keane's not a great defender. So when you can't defend well and you're conceding goals as easily as we do, then the fans have got every right to question the manager. And I think you're absolutely right. They're not going out with confidence because the manager's dumbed down, or is trying to dumb down expectations in hock with the club. These meaningless club interviews after. So just what are the positives you take from that? And just how unlucky were we? Bullshit. Southampton away, what are we doing? Let's flip it round. Let's say Fulham had beaten us, right? And we hadn't got that late winner, Goodison against them. And we'd got a draw, a boring 0-0 draw at Southampton. I think we'd have been crosser than we are now, actually. If we'd lost at home to Fulham, but having, the momentum you get from a late winner, right? We should have used that. We're going to Southampton. Come on.
Yeah.
And when you get a chance, he talks about small margins, doesn't he? He talks about small margins. So when you get a chance, take it. I know Beto's a bit unlucky, but the ball does hit him. And that's what tends to happen rather than directing it. I know it came over quickly, not quite as quickly as it came over for his goal against Fulham, which hit him and went in. But I think he's got to try and keep that header down. And the one that we should have scored for me is the Harrison one, as I said. But those players don't have the confidence and they don't have that. This is the moment. This is the game-winning moment. And we don't take them. So he can come out and talk small margins all he wants. That's why we're losing games, because we're defending poorly at key moments and we're not finishing. Yeah,
well, just on that as well. So, the big elephant in the room there is Jared Brandtwaite, isn't it? It feels like this was his Antolin Alcaraz moment, wasn't it? Keeping that, not putting him in the team the way Martinez didn't put John Stones in that team. And for me, he makes that team infinitely better when he comes in. And you look at any other.
He gives it confidence, Les. He gives it confidence.
Exactly, yeah. So on the one hand, he kept the defenders the same because in his mind they've been doing quite well. So he's kept them there on merit, and Jared Brandtwaite's got to earn his place. Yeah, Beto against Fulham came on, made things happen, scored, is dropped for Calvert-Lewin, who phoned it in again at the weekend. So he's just contradicted himself all the time, isn't he? It's like the defenders, it's a meritocracy to get in the defence, but up front, oh no, you're just in every game. And I do feel like interesting taking that momentum from the end of the Fulham game. You play Beto, don't you? He's the one. Calvert-Lewin's done nothing for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And Dave, we spoke about this on Saturday a bit. Do you think he'll start Beto next week? And do you think he should have started them this week?
He won't start. I don't think he'll start him. I don't feel as if there's enough trust in him from Dyche now. You'd be able to say that's understandable because, like you just said there about Calvert-Lewin, he's just been on the floor since the start of the season. Confidence, whether he's going to move, contract, all of that sort of nonsense. But he still hasn't put in a performance where you're looking at it saying, you know what, he looks like he's playing for the new contract. He looks like he's playing to go to a better club at the end of this season. Nonetheless, I don't think that Dyche himself would think he's not a pragmatic manager. He's not going to look at that and think, you know what, I'm going to make this change because he's been playing shite. He's not that manager at all. The way Rodgers referred to there with the back four there, and Brandtwaite sitting on the bench. Just to go off on a tangent there, what you guys were saying about Brandtwaite, I have a real issue with that in several different ways because I don't know how that lad hasn't started if he's fit. And I think he occasionally had this issue with Moyes. If that lad is fit, he has to start. It's simple as that. He has to start. He's a player that potentially goes for 80-odd million quid, whatever it was going to be, when United are courting him in the summer just gone. And you've got a captain who is all over the place looking like shite. Excuse me. You've got Michael Keane, who's, he's been fine in general compared to the guy next to him. Out of the two you drop, it's absolutely Tarkowski right now. So I think we mentioned at the end of the game at the weekend that you'd probably pick Brandtwaite alongside Keane. But more to the point here, you've got your best defender. He either starts or he's injured and shouldn't be on the bench. And neither of those things happen. You don't put an injured player on that bench. Moyes used to do this. And you'd see someone on the bench, you'd be like, oh, do you know what? He wasn't fully fit. Well, why the fuck's he on the bench? And plus, you've got that 9-foot lad standing next to him there who's come across as fucking useless because he hasn't had a chance whatsoever. I don't understand any sort of logic behind that. And then he comes on, Brandtwaite, with how long were left? 15 left, was it? When he comes on? Yeah, when he comes on at that point, I'm thinking, well, why is this? Well, this isn't a tactical change. he's not putting him on. Like I thought, all right, he'll put him on and just throw him up front like he would be Keane. Didn't do that. He's playing at centre back, so therefore you're looking at it.
He came on with 2 minutes left.
There you go.
He came on for Lindstrom in the 88th minute.
Yeah.
Oh, God, didn't realise it was that late.
You're sitting there thinking, hang on, why is he only got 4 or 5 minutes in his tank there as he shown? Why is he only coming on now? Why is he not starting the game when you've got a captain?
But only brought him on so he could throw the centre back up front, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly. And again, look, why is he on the bench? Is the general question I'd be asking him. Why is our best centre back and one of the best centre backs in the Premier League on the substitute bench? The only thing that would allude to that is the fact that he's not fully fit. If he's not fully fit, then he shouldn't be on the bench. It knocked me sick to see that. I really do not understand that level. And when you start seeing things like that, and I think we see the war cry, don't we? I don't know if you've looked this morning. I did. Have
we had one yet?
It's Lindstrom, I think.
Oh, is it? Oh, great stuff.
Yeah, he's been out saying we need to do better and whatnot. I think he must have drawn the short straw this week to be on and saying that this week. But the point that Rodger makes there about how this side is defensively, it's so fragile. It's so it's on a knife string, isn't it? It really is a position that you can't go to a game with any sort of feeling of confidence. And you mentioned there, Rodger, rightly so. You've got Branthwaite there. You get him on. If again, I keep saying it, repeated, but if you get him on as soon as possible, Everton's confidence lift. All of us as fans, our confidence lifts. Is that so ridiculous for a manager like Sean Dyche to just not realise? And then he comes out after the game, and I understand, look, the Everton side of stuff, they're going to go through the PR stuff, and it's pointless listening to it unless you really want to make yourself feel bad. You just don't listen to that nonsense they come out with at the end of games with Everton. Obviously, there's a PR side, like I've just mentioned there. But when he comes out on Match of the Day saying, "Oh, it's he's on the road to nowhere here. He's on the road to where he ultimately gets sacked." When that position happens, is very much dependent on where Everton end up finishing at the end of the season and whether we're in a relegation fight all the way till the end of it. Because when he comes out with the stuff that he has, when he sticks with the narrative that he has towards the end of a campaign, he refuses to address himself. He refuses to say, "I've made this, I've made that." Now, I know no manager in football is ever going to do that, but when he's hanging certain decisions out to dry, you know that he's heading towards the end of it when he starts talking about, "Oh, well, it's fine margins here, it's fine margins there. I think he should have got sent off for knocking Beto down. When Beto's running, he probably could get in to get one-on-one with the keeper, blaming referees and all that." You start to hear that language, and that's when managers start to move towards the exit door, either the club or themselves. And it needs to happen as soon as possible, in my opinion. Look, and the first question you're going to get from many who are supporting, or the last few who are supporting him, you're going to get asked the immediate question, "Well, who are we going to go and get then? Who are we going to go and get then?" Personally, don't care. I really don't care, because can you get anybody in worse than him, the way we play?
He's just not that smart, is he? He comes across as a really... He puts himself forward as this, I think I've said it before, a sort of cross between Pep Guardiola and Aristotle. But he's not that smart. And the one thing he could have done that I thought he might do on Saturday was go to 3 at the back, because that would have allowed him to keep his centre-back chums. Branthwaite play 3 at the back. Obviously, McNeil or Harrison could have played as a wing-back, and Ashley Young on the other side. And McNeil carrying an injury, that would have given us an opportunity. The other thing he could have done, without upsetting dear old DCL, is he could have started with 2 up front. But he doesn't change anything, not just in-game, but pre-game. Go to 3 at the back, play 5 at the back, whatever you want to call it, or go with 2 up front. But instead, it's the same old formation, the same old people, and the same old predictable substitutions, and wouldn't you know it, the same old shit. Because, should we be further up the league? I'm not sure. Should we? Well, not on results, but we should be playing better football. I mean, this is not just a hard watch. This is almost impossible to watch. I think I went down for a pint at about 35 minutes, which is kind of towards the end of when I was still up in the top balcony. That was the kind of time I went when towards the end of the Koeman regime and towards the end of the Silva regime. And there were probably 200 people down there having a bevy at 30, 35 minutes, just watching it on the screen. So you ask, what's the mood of the fan base? I think it's pretty disinterested, and they're just having a day out and a nice chat with the mates, really, because the football is dire. It's appalling, and that leads to that's a product of a lack of confidence, a lack of belief, and tactics that belong in the 60s or the 70s, not in the 2020s.
Yeah, it does feel like that apathy set in again with the fans, doesn't it? I know sort of when I've been at games, it's like the Fulham game, the atmosphere was crap. It should have been decent. I know it was only Fulham, but it's R5 on a Saturday night, and there was just nothing. And I think we spoke last week, didn't we? That comes from the players because, they're playing such passive football. After that game, I think that goal, that equaliser, just papered over a lot of cracks, didn't it? And I think Matt said the most worrying thing about the Southampton game was that was the reaction from the Fulham game. The fact that, we didn't get turned over, but we were rubbish for 90 minutes against Fulham. And then we sort of pulled it round at the end. And then there was no response from the team. And as you say, Rod, he could have changed something personnel-wise. I think 5-3-2 would have been perfect because you then get the two strikers. You've got three in the middle, so your midfield shouldn't really get overrun because there's enough bodies in there. And you've got a solid backline. That would make sense. And it's not something you can just parachute in. You can't just suddenly say to players, right, we're playing 5 at the back today, lads. You need to work on it for the week. But he had that whole time. I think Allardyce did that at Arsenal one time, didn't he? Just inexplicably played 5 at the back and we got turned over 5-0.
We still got pummeled.
Yeah, you've got all week to work on this, and you've got the players who can play in that system. I don't think anything will change before West Ham, but looking ahead to that is a huge game for both managers, one more than the other, because I think if West Ham get beat by us, he's gone. Lopetegui's gone, I reckon. Other way round, if West Ham beat us, I don't think Sean Dyche will be gone. I don't know if there's anyone there to do it. Yeah. I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, Dave, do you think he's happy in the fact that there's just no pressure on him, really? Because there's not, is there?
Do you know what's really interesting you say that? Because you're right. I think Lopetegui's he's on the last legs there, isn't he? If they lose, particularly to Everton, if you're a West Ham fan right now, you should be licking your lips at Everton coming to town. I mean, a point I made as well, Rodger, I don't know if you listened to it or not, about I was talking about how far down the line Sean Dyche can go before he actually does get sacked. The immediate response from many is, well, there's no one there to sack him. Does he? And the question there that Les has posed, I think, is really interesting. That he doesn't strike me as a man who's. Do you remember when Sean Dyche? Remember when Silva was going through the rigmarole before he got sacked? He looked like a man that had been thrown out by his wife and he was sleeping in his car.
Yes,
he looked
was the same, wasn't he?
He looked absolutely done in. Yeah, exactly. They looked like men with the world on their shoulders. Sean Dyche strike you as a man that looks like that? Absolutely not. He doesn't. And a point I made as well is that if you're a manager there, you're Lopetegui, and you think, you know what, this 90 minutes is where my job's on the line here. Who have I got next? Everton at home, right? You probably couldn't hope for a better opponent to have here when you desperately need 3 points to keep your job, first of all.
Maybe Everton
then
away.
Secondly, you come in and you've got the, what'd you say, sorry?
I said maybe Everton away you'd prefer.
Yeah. And he comes in, Monday morning, whatever it is, tomorrow, and he gets the projector out and he looks at it and he's got all his lads there in his office saying, right, here we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going through tactics. You look at what you've got to do about Everton now. I presume they're spending a few hours in an afternoon after they come in from training trying to go over what they're going to do against an opponent. I think if you see Everton and you're the opposition and you're playing them at home, I think you can say, listen, lads, you can get off home early this afternoon. This takes about half an hour to go through what we need to do against Everton to prevent them from scoring a goal against us, to prevent them from coming here and getting the result against us. That is how predictable this squad and this team is. Like we mentioned, personally think Calvert-Lewin will start. Personally think, obviously, Tarkowski's not going to get dropped, despite the fact you've got 2 centre-backs there on the bench. You've actually got 2 goalkeepers as well, which is another point of discussion, isn't it? The way we end up with that when supposedly we've got a squad of players there. And we're only talking 6 pointers, and we're 10 games into a season now, and we're talking. I keep on mentioning that word language. It feels as if we're talking about stuff that, if you were to take this and give it to somebody who didn't know any idea of when this time of a season is, we'll be thinking, do you know what? There must only be half a dozen games left here, the way these guys are talking. There must only be 10 games left here where you immediately, drastically need a change in order to keep you in the Premier League. I'd still, do you know what? I'd go as far as saying that's how I feel right now. I think you need to make a change here to keep Everton in the Premier League. And that's taking apart the actual bottom three we're looking at. And look, a lot of people said, certainly last season as well, that the three that came up, probably three of the weakest. Everton have made one of them there. Well, two of them. We went to Leicester as well, didn't we? We've made two of those sides there look a much better unit than ourselves. Not so much Southampton, but certainly Leicester. We got a point from those two games there, and they are immediately 6-point matches for us, and we've only took one from those two. Level of opponents we've got coming up. December, in a nutshell, is an absolute nightmare. Now, the argument people would make to keep Dyche on would be, well, it doesn't really matter who's in when we're in December, because we're likely going to get beat by those four sides anyway, the four big boys that we've got to go and play. The Derby aside, because that's a completely different issue, isn't it, like we showed at the end of last season. But when you're in that sort of position and you're thinking, do you know what, let's keep giving them a chance. No manager could come in and we could do any better against those sides that are fighting for titles and top four and whatnot. Well, they absolutely can. They absolutely can do a better job than Sean Dyche. I'm not saying that somebody's going to come in and take 12 points, beat a lot of them, and we're looking at a European place when we go into New Year. That's obviously not going to happen. The way Everton play against these sides, the way Sean Dyche sets things up, the way in which that word confidence is non-existent right now, you are looking at those games and thinking you're going to absolutely ripped apart. Going to Man City,
exactly.
You are going to be absolutely shitting your pants going to Man City, and that's just us, let alone what's going to be going on in the dressing room there with the players, where all 10 of them have got to stay in their own half for us to even think about them struggling to score a goal, which they inevitably will anyway. So you're wasting time not to change things over right now. And I've never been a fan. I think most of our listeners for years would never think me to come out and say a massive knee-jerk reaction to things. But these points that I'm making, I think that all three of us, you've got to change this as soon as possible. And that's not me saying you've got to change it now because we've got a really tough run of games in December. It's not just that. You're going to lose those 4 games, whoever you are, then, that's probably going to happen anyway. The way Everton are, the Everton squad they've got, and the way things are at the club right now. Everton losing those 4 games, people are like, do you know what? That's probably level par. We're going to get a point here or there. That's a bonus. That's the thing that you sort of put to one side. You go into New Year and we're not in the bottom 3. That's when it feels like it really start for a brand new manager. But so in my opinion, you're wasting time if you don't do that as soon as possible. And then anything we go and get in January, in December, aside from Wolves, you 1 points against the Forest. The home games are good, and you're thinking, do you know what, we really, really need to be taking points here. Aside from that, there's not much of a difference between Everton's results than what would happen if you waited anyway. So that's why I think you do this as soon as possible.
Yeah, but let's not. You're absolutely right. A couple of quick points, if I may. Ipswich have drawn 5 games out of their 10. By the way, they've been unlucky not to at least get 1 win. They've conceded late equalisers and late goals, right? So they've got 5. They've drawn half their games, right? Leicester have always going to carry a threat, and Leicester got a late winner at Southampton. Otherwise, Southampton would have had another point or 2. Let's just talk about. There's no one there to sack him, right? The Friedkins are apparently about to sack their 3rd manager in 4 days or something at Roma. Apparently, I read, and
tailor-made for us, isn't
it? And apparently, Frank Lampard is a candidate for that job. I mean,
I saw that.
He was on the telly yesterday. I think he was selling himself, wasn't he?
Unbelievable. But the Friedkins are going to be our owners sooner rather than later, and surely the Friedkins are now looking at this situation. And have some influence over what's going on. Surely the Friedkins can expedite that process. They know how much we'll have to pay him. It's a shame. I believe we have to pay him. Although his contract's only got 6 or 7 months to run, he's due a payoff if we sack him before the end, and not just what's left of his contract.
All right.
But I believe, I don't know, I may have dreamt that, or it may have been a nightmare. I don't know. But okay, Colin Chong isn't going to sack anyone, and Kevin Thelwell isn't going to sack anyone, and Mashiri is on a yacht somewhere. But the Friedkins do have effective control without ownership, without it being rubber stamped. And I surely they can just do this, just because I think, Dave, you're absolutely right. We should. Nothing is going to change. He's proven that. He's in that stubborn phase, and it's that time of year. It's the Koeman time of year. It's the Benitez time of year. It's the Lampard time of year. It's November, and Everton manager is stubborn and sticks with his favourites and loses his job. And that's what's got to happen. Surely the Friedkins can bring that about, can they?
Yeah, it's an interesting.
Sorry, Les. I was just going to say then. Sorry, what Rodger, that point's spot on there, because you've got new owners coming in who financially, to my knowledge, are going to give us a bit of a clean slate here. So therefore, giving Sean Dyche what he needs to get his bags, and we say, listen, thanks for keeping us up for the past few seasons, Sean, but go back to the Championship, because that's the level of manager in which you are. That shouldn't be
Plymouth soon.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that shouldn't be a difficult scenario for those guys to come in and be able to do it. But that was a couple of million, whatever quid it is, which we're very used to doing anyway, aren't we, when we get rid of managers? I don't think that's going to cost heaven and earth to get rid of him. And you're right there, Rodger, because there's no board, because there's Thelwell there, there's Chong there, and various other shareholders and whatnot who obviously won't be able to make that decision to that extent. You've surely they're able to say, look, if they're not even ironclad, but it's going to happen, like we know, they should be able to go in there now and say, look, when we come in here, we're in fear of Everton being in a relegation fight. We've come in, we're really excited about a new project here. We want Everton to return where they were. All of that sort of language that we want to hear when they come in. They've got a fresh bat there to come out and say what they like that's really positive and we're all going to get. Or, look at these lads, that's going to be really exciting. We're going to sign all sorts of players. Surely right now they have an authority. Maybe it's too strong a word. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but maybe now they have a way of getting in who they would like to see as Everton manager if they don't like Sean Dyche. I do fear for us if they do like Sean Dyche and want to stay on. I really hope it's not that sort of scenario where you get a new owner come in and they say, right, we'll wait and just wait and see and try and sort of put it on the back burner, and if he can change, if he can move things around, much the same way in which I think the club looked towards Frank Lampard in that ridiculous run of games where he went on far too long. Lest we forget, last season Sean Dyche went through a pretty equal run of games where it was 1 win in 14. I think it was even worse, like 1 win in 15.
It was the worst winless run, I think, wasn't it, we've ever had?
But yes, in comparison to Lampard, we didn't see anywhere near the level of criticism saying that Lampard needs to get binned. We didn't see that Sean Dyche came across that level of scrutiny that Frank Lampard got. And I don't really know, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But I don't see why we weren't sort of clamouring for that. The reason maybe was because we don't want to sack another manager. We don't want to sack another manager. Yeah. You need to take that narrative out of your mind if you're saying, oh, it's the 5th, 6th manager in 7 years, whatever it is. That doesn't matter. Take that out of your mind right now. The reason why you need to get rid is because of the priority that is above everything else, and that is to secure our survival and get Everton to a position where we can all look at it and think, you know what, we're actually paying for we're paying our hard-earned wages to go and watch us and actually enjoy watching us as a team, and also get some fucking points on the board that we aren't talking about. We could end up in Bramley Moor in the Championship.
Yeah, well, this brings us back to standards. Sorry to jump in. I just had a bit of a light bulb moment. This brings us back to standards, because the only standard that the club is holding Dyche to is keeping us in the Premier League. And this notion that sacking managers is a bad thing is total bullshit, because look at what Chelsea did under Abramovich. Chelsea sack managers every 18 months, and they went out the door. Famous names, big international proven managers who'd actually won them trophies. Because why did they sack them? Because at that moment and for a short period of time, they were not hitting the standards that Chelsea Football Club wanted them to be hitting, and that's why people got the sack within 18 months of probably winning a trophy. The difference is simple: our standards are on the floor. They are on the floor, and it is simply good enough to finish 17th. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter the style of football. It doesn't matter who you play, so long as we get to Bramley Moore and stay in the Premier League. And I say again, what the hell is going to change when we get to Bramley Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been dragged into that mindset myself. It does, I'm thinking, let's just get through the season. I've been thinking the same for the last 3. Basically, it's been, if we just get through this season, something will change. Like you say, Rog, there's nothing. We've got a really good chance to change everything this coming summer. But who's going to change it? How is it going to change? And it does feel like it just could be the same old shit, but just in a nicer surroundings. I think just before we finish, then, obviously, if the Freakins come in and take over and get someone else in, do you think they look for a permanent replacement or an interim until the end of the season? Obviously, David Moyes' name is going to get bandied about because he's free. And it feels like, I don't know, it just feels like him managing us in our final season at Goodison was always going to happen. Somehow, I think, when he got the boot from West Ham. Would you take him, or would you hope they've got a plan for a manager to come in for the long term?
Les, I know you're an assistant manager on the under-16 side there. I'd take you ahead of Sean Dyche.
I wasn't managing a very successful team as well.
There you go, absolutely, yeah.
Play good football as well, I've heard. Play good football, play out from the back.
Yeah, well, it couldn't be difficult to play better than the way we are under Dyche anyway. But with Moyes, who's obviously thrown in there, there's you'd have an extensive end of each of the scales, aren't you, with him? There's nobody who seems to be smacked in the middle thinking, do you know what? It makes sense for him to come back in. It's a little bit more pragmatic from the club to be able to go and do that. Safe pair of hands scenarios and whatnot. I think we're edging towards a point where you get somebody in until the end of the season. Because, look, it'd be lovely if we're able to say, oh, do you know what? Let's get somebody in here who's even Mourinho ridiculously was linked, wasn't he, because of his touches with Roma. That's obviously not going to happen. That's a bit of a laugh and a joke. But I don't think we're in a position where we can go and get a manager that can firstly keep us in the Premier League and then look to a future thinking that we're even better. I think you have to go and get somebody, again, who's good at putting fires out there. I'm not looking to Sam Allardyce by any means whatsoever, but you go and get somebody you can put a contract with and say, look, let's see where this goes to the end of the season, keep us up, then we'll sort of address what's going on in the summer. Much the same way it happened with Sean Dyche, really. I mean, am I right in saying that he got a contract at the end of the season and then was given a couple of year deal? Is that am I right in saying that?
I thought he had 18 months and then we extended it by 1 year.
Yeah.
I think.
So there, I mean, you've got an incentive to throw at somebody, haven't you? To say, you keep Everton in the Premier League, you're probably going to get a contract there when you get to Bramley Moore. And then that leads on to what you getting when you sign this manager.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously, keep you in the Premier League priority above all else. But have you got a manager there that's going to appease what fans want to see? The right sort of narrative that's going to come about? Are they able to say the right things? Are they able to change things up? Are they able to mix what we're seeing on the pitch, not just sticking with his boys who he probably rocks up to Burnley with and have a pint after every game? Are we able to get somebody in who will completely change that? Somebody who's complete 180 on what we've got with Sean Dyche as our boss. That's possible. That's doable. You've got new owners that come in. They will have no doubt done their homework by now. Within serious shit if they haven't. But I would presume they've come in and done that and had a look at it and thought, you know what, here's a load of different scenarios here. This is going to be what we need to do, because if we're getting rid of Sean Dyche, Everton are in X position where they are right now. What are we going to do here? I think the sensible thing would to be get somebody in, keeps us up, and then you look to readdress that. I'm not talking across the summer. I'm talking about like final days of a season, to be able to say to somebody who comes in, hopefully, look, you've shown us what you're able to do. You've, again, appeased what fans want to see on the pitch. You've done various things here. You've done a really good job. It's pretty obvious we need to give you longer in this role. Throw Moyes into the mix there. I mean, he might get slated for this. I'd take David Moyes back right now.
He gets more out of that squad, doesn't he?
Oh, well, this is the thing that he's good at. You know, he's a unique manager in many ways because he's able to get results from us looking like shite, because we've seen that when he was our manager and we had the squad. Season we finished fourth. I know the game's completely different now and whatnot, but you've got a manager. Look what he did at West Ham there when he got sacked, went to Sociedad, wasn't it, and then came back and went and won them a trophy. He's got that ability. I mean, that term dinosaur. Probably rightly so, when you've got somebody like Sean Dyche there, and Moyes would be referred to as such, and he'd have a lot of pressure on him straight away. But, you know, the situation calls for somebody who's able to come in and, look, he knows the club. There are various different facets of what he would bring that we all know about. You know what you're getting with somebody like that. He'd take it if you... He wouldn't even have to sign a contract to say, yeah, it's mine, I'll take it right now. He'd drive up there this morning if it was his wife's birthday. That's how much he'd want to get back to Everton as manager.
Do you think so, even when they did the dirty on him, when they appointed Ancelotti?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Oh, I think he'd walk to Goodison. I think he'd walk from wherever he is in this country. I think he'd walk to Goodison.
I reckon he definitely gets more out of that squad, but Rog, for me, it would just be another typically Everton backward step, like we've done for years. I'll go back to like.
Les, can you have one of those? Can we step back any further?
No, what I mean is, though, we're sort of saying things need to change. The club needs to change. We're just in this constant doom cycle, but we've been in it since the last time we won the league. To be honest, we've gone back to managers time and time again. We've made the wrong appointments. It feels like, for me, to really change it, someone needs to come in with a long-term plan now, and a decent long-term plan.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. No,
yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, but I don't think the time for that person is now, because it's far too much pressure to put on somebody who would be a relatively young, up-and-coming coach, possibly from Europe, coming into a new league, new language, etc. I think we need to find our Amorim or De Zerbi or Iraola, because Iraola ain't leaving Bournemouth. That's not happening.
Yeah, you've got Potter sitting there as well, Rodger. I mean, sorry, Rodger. I was just going to say, I was going to say, you are doing a complete different take there in a manager that you want to come in. That's a dangerous thing to do, given what we've got and what we've seen so far. Yeah, exactly. He's somebody you probably think. You go and look at someone like that in the summer once you've stayed up.
Yeah. I think I would take Moyes. Well, I know I would take Moyes, and I'm less bothered about Dyche taking us into Bramley Moor. It actually upsets me to think that Dyche will be in the dugout for our final game at Goodison. He's not an Everton manager. He's bailed us out of 2 crises, and we're grateful to him for that. But he has proven this season that he cannot progress this group of players. And he's all out of tricks at the back, and his loyal lieutenants, whether it's Tarkowski, McNeil, Keane, they're not quite able to deliver. He's not getting the best out of the rest of the squad, and the time is now. I think you're right. And the only person who could, I would take Mourinho in a heartbeat. I just love the guy. I think he's brilliant, and I think he's just by talking, he'd make the players believe they were better, and only on a short-term basis. But come in and he'd scare the living daylights out of everyone. You know, you want him in the dugout against Liverpool every day of the week, against anyone. But you know, the Moyes knife to a gunfight was a hell of an improvement in standards than Dyche's stay up and get to Bramley Moor. So yeah, I'd take Moyes, and I think the time is now. I don't think it's fair to put it on a longer term manager. I think that would be a mistake. And I'd like to think the Friedkins are pragmatic enough to do that. But I think you can probably still get 16-1 on Dyche to be the next manager to go. So get your money on.
Yeah.
Right. We'll leave it there. If you're a gambling person, get your money on Dyche to go. Maybe.
I'm just gonna check now. It's live. Let's just see. Next Premier League manager to leave is Sean Dyche 25-1. Wow.
You make up a nice Christmas there. Well, hopefully anyway. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Lopetegui 9-4. Lopetegui
is he really?
Is it? Yeah, 9-4.
I'll tell you what,
with the Southampton manager.
I know, just quickly before we finish there, that shows you in a nutshell the difference of clubs there right away, doesn't it?
Spot on.
You've got a manager there that West Ham, they want rid of him if they're looking anywhere near a relegation fight in the bottom half of the Premier League table, whereas Everton are maintaining with who we've got, really, who seems to have lost everything, any limited amount of ideas that he's got to change things. Yet Everton
that's right.
are well further down the list to sack theirs when they're, funnily enough, and I say funnily enough for everybody else, a neutral watching what we're doing right now, who are in a position where they absolutely need to do so much before West Ham. Yeah, it's chalk and cheese who would go and do it first. It's pretty obvious West Ham would.
Well, it's the 4 teams below us. Listen, it's the 4 teams below us. Russell Martin at Southampton and Lopetegui. Then it's Gary O'Neill at 5-2. Glasner of Palace at 8-1. And we are, he's the 9th or 10th favourite. He's the same odds as Postecoglou at Tottenham. I mean, come on.
And you look at those sides that are in, point wise, are in a worse position than we are. Do you know what I mean? And
exactly.
You've got Sean Dyche 25-1. I mean, I don't know. You probably are wasting money because he's just not going to go anywhere, is he? That's the really sad thing here. That's the drastically worrying thing for me.
As you say, I think those odds do speak volumes. It's a strange position we're in. Thanks to Rog. Thanks to Dave for that. Let us know what you think in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast, leave us a review. Get in touch on Twitter if you've got any thoughts on it. We'll be back with all the usual stuff this week in the lead up to that massive West Ham game. Thanks again, Rog. Thanks again, Dave. Up the toffees, I guess.